Welcome to another episode of Bros Banter. This week, actually, my bro, Louis, is actually not in because he's having problems at home. Potential flooding. Maybe, maybe not. Well, we'll see. So we decided to call in the most reliable person that we know. He didn't answer. Then we went with my dad. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Gauthier.
Hi, and how are you?
That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me today. How are you? Okay, so I think today's subject is we're going to dive deep into the wealth and the depth of knowledge that is my dad about things that happened in a
40 years ago, maybe?
like in Star Wars, a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
In the galaxy unknown, before cell phones, actual accessible internet, live streaming, podcasts. So let's go back to 1981. What was going on in 1981?
Inflation.
Still
Pretty much is.
Still relevant
Was.
today?
Very much so.
Okay, so what happened to make that create that inflation and like before? Because there's always a lead up, right, to inflation.
The lead up was, it pretty much started in 1976, 77, where government started to run deficit and the GDP was not following the size of the deficit. You know, there's a percentage that didn't match. It was far too much deficit for the economic growth of the country. So as it went along, you started to have, the Bank of Canada rate starting to increase slowly, but inflation was increasing faster. So it was pretty much a new phenomena for the governor of the Bank of Canada, which I don't remember his name. And they didn't know how to deal with it. Politically, inflation where it was at 5 or 6% is not bad. But then the economy started to slow down and inflation kept going up.
So just to be clear, before 1976,
Growth.
So there was the government wasn't running a deficit.
It started to run a deficit. These social programs of the early Trudeau era started to affect.
Okay, so like Medicare kicking in.
Not mostly Medicare, but all kinds of social programs of just about every kind started to create or help the government create deficit. And after a while, in 76, 77, 78, the economy didn't follow. The growth was not there. I remember clearly Montreal was pretty much a dead city. It was in 77, 78, the same.
Right after the Olympics.
That too, right after the Olympic and right when the PQ government got elected, a lot of fear was in the financial institution, not to say financial world. So it all put together a lot of migration towards West Toronto, and there was a feeling of gloom and doom, and economy was slowing down, as I said before. Inflation was picking up, and that happened to be what we call now the phenomenon of stagflation. Stagflation is a slow economy or no growth economy and inflation going up. Inflation is very much a psychological thing. Once it creeps in the system, people are expecting inflation. Things go up, and people are not surprised that they go up, whereby they should be surprised because there's no need for costs for goods to be more expensive. But if people are willing to accept to pay more, and then the merchants, producers, and so on will deliver what to the expectation of people.
So they're going for the market for what the market is expecting. If
Yeah.
everybody's expecting, if everybody's been told there's inflation, well, okay, so inflation has to be apparent on every side of the market, and
Yeah.
but isn't also the merchants also dealing with inflation? So are they just not trying to balance things out, or are they just
It goes
making
down,
extra?
It goes down the chain. At first, they're making extra, but they too are expecting inflation. So they're expecting to pay more. Workers or unions are expecting inflation, so they're asked for higher wages. You see, it's pretty much something that is going down for.
So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Everybody's
Yes.
expecting to
Pay more,
I put on the word inflation. Everybody's expecting to pay more. So all these various mechanisms in a society, they try to compensate or readjust, but there's always a lag. So during that lag, there's certain people that are making more money off of that timetable.
Yeah. Now, the thing is, inflation is like cancer. Once it's in the system, it's incredibly hard to get rid of it. So you almost have to create a recession to get rid of the inflation mentality.
That sounds almost like baby boomers.
It
once,
is.
Once they're in the system, it's incredibly hard to get rid of them.
Yes, we tend to live long and be a pain.
We tried with COVID, didn't work.
Yes. Now, once you have that, you need to have a kind of you need to create a shock in the economy, and the shock in the economy was higher rates. Rates in 81, mortgage rate were as high as 21%.
Yeah, but I want to stop you there. Okay, so let's wind back the clock and make it really simple for people that are listening or watching. Okay, in 1981, the rates went dramatically up.
Yes.
But if you looked at the whole map of the economy, of what was going on, like the ecosystem of the economy at that time, the average salary, and I checked this up, the average salary in 1981 for Canadians was around 24,000. That was the medium salary. The average cost of a house was roughly around 50,000.
Yeah.
So what was the average cost for a liter of gasoline?
We were in the gallon in those days. Liters. So
Okay, a gallon. What was it?
to tell you frankly, I don't remember. It must have been around, I don't know, 80 cents, 75 cents.
75 cents for 4 liters
Yeah,
of petrol.
It could have been there. Yeah, it would have been.
So, okay, let's call it an even 10,
Yeah,
10 cents a liter. Oh, God.
yeah, I would have been there. So, you're talking
Okay,
about 15, 17, 20 cents a liter.
Okay, so how much in 81, how much doing grocery for your situation, two kids, 2 parents, 2 kids. What was the grocery cost? Like, cost you $100 a week?
Probably. Probably less than that. I'd sit around 85.
Okay.
Probably.
But it was a big crisis because you were making above average salary already, which was 35,000. But then all of a sudden your mortgage rate climbed up.
Yeah, and then I had to tell you frankly, had I gone to a public institution like a bank or even a trust company in those days, they were pretty much into the mortgage market, I would have had to shell about for a year 20%, 21% rate.
But that was because it was a variable rate. There was no such thing as fixed rate.
No. There was no such thing as variable rates in those days.
Or fixed rate. It was the rate.
That was the rate. The fixed rate could have been, and in those days it was pretty much the same for 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years, renewable. So it was, it would be like that. So I went to, a friend of mine was a private lender, and he got me a great deal, 16%, which was 500 basis points below what the trust companies then were offering. So that made a big difference. But so people had a hard time making ends meet, paying for their mortgage.
But their credit cards were not rampant. Most family had one car. It wasn't a two-car automatic situation. Getting a car didn't cost you, you could, like,
No.
I mean, the expenses of 41 years ago versus the expenses of today are completely different. Like, no such thing as internet, no such thing as, cell phone, no such thing, so, like, there was still theoretically more money.
No, there was, if the average is $25,000 average salary,
Yeah.
well, there's basically, a phone was a lot more expensive.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, well, in relation to the money they were making, it was more expensive then than vis-a-vis now. But also
You had a credit card, but not a lot of people had credit cards.
the credit card was starting to happen, to become a lot more popular. And but it was mostly, there was no debit, so it was cash or credit card. On one hand, but then you can buy a beer at the bar for less than $2. So it's all relevant vis-a-vis the money you're making. But people in those days were having a hard time making ends meet.
International travel wasn't a big thing
It
for most people.
But it was an expensive thing. They were,
How much more expensive than? Like today, I can probably hop onto a plane, go to Paris for $700.
oh, you had to pay around $1,200 in those days.
You had to pay
Traveling was at,
$1,200.
oh yeah,
In 1981.
Yeah.
To go.
yeah.
To Paris.
Traveling was an expensive proposition on international travel. There was no discount, none whatsoever. Stewardess and pilots were basically like gods in the transportation business. So traveling was not a public, was not very democratic in terms of people taking the plane.
People that went had the money, and people that
Yeah.
and when they were going was for either business, very much business,
Mostly corporate.
yeah, or they were going for leisure because they were
Yeah, and
wealthy.
they had money. So then you started to see those, Sunwing type of, or Air Transat type of airlines. This is when they started to discount the traveling because they would book in advance. And it started to be more, becoming a lot more of a normal thing to travel. But it was only at the beginning.
Yeah, people still wore suits to get on planes.
Yes,
because you
very
had to-
much so.
Because
Because it was
a
the
thing. fashionable
thing to do.
it was a thing.
And
you
it, when you travel in planes, it was very, there was something of an aura to it.
know. Yeah, drinking scotch and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
smoking cigarettes.
It was all
on plane.
free booze, free drinks, whether you were in first class or not. In first class,
Fuck,
they
at
would.
$1,200, the better
Yeah,
be
but
fucking free
the-
booze.
at first class, they would have a pepper steak flambé, in the plane. In those days, it was very much that.
Flambe, shit, that plane.
Yeah, and you could smoke, and then the stewardess were still pouring wine from the bottle, and it was definitely a classy thing to do. Then it's starting to become more like taking the bus, and starting in the 80s, because discount flying started to be the thing. So Freddie Laker built a huge business, Sir Freddie Laker, with cheap fares. Then he was competing with BOAC in those days, and that's all then they all started to pretty much have bigger planes, wider body, and the cheaper rates.
Oh yeah. They were still, the recipe was moving away from executive style flying to real commercial flying with the Boeing 777,
747, mostly 7. The big revolution started in the 66, 67 when the 747 appeared, and it was Pan Am, and people said it'll never work, except they were wrong. And Braniff Airways created all those planes with fancy colors, and it became a more of a utility than a fashion.
A fashion statement.
Yeah. So that's how it started.
Okay, but going back to inflation, so it's 1981. You're paying 21% on your. You would have paid. That was the going rate, 21%.
Yeah.
On a $50,000 house. So, argument's sake, your annual interest rate would be
the payment without it's quite simple.
What?
Let's say you have a mortgage of $25,000, which was or $30,000.
How much cash down did you have to put?
It all started. It started with a $5,000 on the previous house that I had. Sold it, switched it from my house to the other house, and the owner of the other house took over my house, smaller house. And so, if I had a $30,000 mortgage, well, yeah, it was about 30 to 35. If it's at 20%, it's $7,500 a year, not counting the capital that you pay up. Also, and on a, let's say, $35,000 salary, after income tax, then you're pretty much at, let's say, if it's 35, the income tax is about, let's say, about 30%. So you're right off the bat, you're about 10,500 you pay the government. So you have 10,500, 25. You have about $22,000 left in your pocket, and out of that, $7,500 that goes for living expenses, food. And before food, electricity, life insurance, and all those things. So it was pretty tight. It was like seriously tight. But and then in those days, from 80 to 83, the Bank of Canada kept pushing up the rates. It stopped pretty much in 82.
What happened?
Governor Crow stepped in, and he decided to kill the inflation dragon. And so he had all the banks on one day a week, I think it was on Mondays, he had them various a questionnaire that they needed to, and that was, he was looking for statistics, and once a week, whether it was the chairman of Royal Bank or CIBC or other smaller banks like Mercantile Bank of Canada, Provincial Bank in those days, they had to give him numbers. And it was mandatory, and you'd better be prepared, because he was an incredibly difficult individual that had migrated from the UK, the Bank of England, I think, to Bank of Canada. So he was very much a governor of a central bank who was of old school, and he would take
They didn't take any bullshit.
No bullshit. The banks and the bankers had to deliver. If not, he would give him hell. literally. And they were all afraid of him because he could do terrible things to a bank that didn't meet
Yeah.
what he was asking.
Didn't comply. Okay.
Yeah. So it was drastic.
But how did he slay that inflation beast? How did he just? What was?
He had the mandate.
What was the fuckery? What was the reason? How did he?
How? It's quite simple. Too much inflation doesn't get a politician reelected.
Okay, so but the way you're talking about inflation, it's a fictional thing.
No, it is and it isn't. Once you believe there is inflation, perception becomes reality.
Okay.
And that's all there is to it.
So meanwhile, the GDP caught up. The more.
Meanwhile, at first there was recession, which he wanted. Then there was no need for a lot of borrowing. So then there was a lot of people put on POGI, unemployment. So the economy slowed down, and the economy slowing down. You have negative growth, which is totally ridiculous for a terminology. Mm-hmm. He created a recession so that people were fired. There was no two ways about it.
So he created. So he pretty much kind of did a restart.
Yeah,
he did a power cycle on the economy.
Yes, very much so. So then to slay the inflation dragon, which it happened, and from 82, let's say 82, mid 82, end of 82, rates started to come down.
Yeah, because people didn't have any money.
People didn't have any money. Production was low.
They didn't have any money because they didn't have income, whereas before they didn't have any money because inflation was eating all their income.
Exactly. So then it took about, from 83 it took about 20 years to slay the inflation dragon.
20 years?
Yeah. And I bring that to you for one simple reason. There's a Russian mathematician called Kondryatsev. And he determined on economy have the 40 to 45 year cycle.
Was he communist?
No, I think in fact he may have been shot by the communists.
So he's one of the good ones.
So he wasn't a Bolshevik, that's for sure. So economy goes in a cycle where rates are very low, rates creep up slowly. You have what you call a bell,
Yeah.
and then something happens at the top, and then rates creep down slowly, and then they flatten for a period of time, could be 10 years. I think pretty much rates have flattened. We're in 2022. I'd say rates have started to be flat in about 2017, 2018. So, and now you have a 4-year cycle of flat rates, and then rates are starting to creep up.
Okay, so there was it took 20 years to stabilize the inflation and bring it down.
Much.
So we're moving from 1981 to 2001.
2021.
No, that's 40 years.
No. So it's not 20 years. It's 40-year cycle, 40 to 45 year cycle.
So it took a 45-year cycle.
From the beginning of inflation to the end of inflation.
And now we're back into inflation?
Yeah, it's a 40, 45 years. And then you have a flat 2 to 3 years, 4 years, because things are nice.
We had low interest rates.
For about the last 4 years.
No,
Yes.
man,
Yes.
bro, no way. We had
Yes,
low
yeah.
inflation rates in 2000 and 2009.
No.
Yeah.
You were renewing a mortgage in 2009, 2010, a 5-year mortgage at 4.25%, and you thought you were a hero.
Well, 4.25% is really good compared to 21%.
Yes, I know. I was all that.
Okay,
but
when
now,
did it really break down the from the 21% to something that people could start thinking it's palatable, around 6? Like right now, if we say 6%, 3/4 of the people that have houses are going to go shoot themselves in the head.
When you had a 5-year mortgage at 10% in the late 80s, early 90s. And
Okay,
you were
so it wasn't
doing
that
well.
bad. It dropped. Like there was a big initial
Went up,
drop,
and yeah, yeah, of course. But then it's dropped slowly. So
and then it
you
trickles
were
down.
what you
Okay.
were in a what you called in the bond market. You were in a bull market. Rates coming down.
Okay, good.
So deflation was in the minds of people. What's a good example of deflation? I remember having a Honda Pilot. I think it was in 2014 or 15, and getting a new one at a lower cost than the one that I gave back.
Okay, so yeah, that was an example.
Is deflation.
That was an example where interest rates are almost
It's
null and
like
void.
keep going down and down and down
because you're getting the same good at a cheaper
at a cheaper cost.
So yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So I can see that happening. Okay, because it's very, I just want to be very clear, because when we're talking about hitting an interest rate of 21%, and then it slides down to 10, for anybody that lived at 21%, paying
From 21 to 10%,
10%, man,
it's party time,
well,
sort
yeah,
of.
it's 10% less,
Yes.
and you got theoretically 10%
And-
more money.
Yeah, and houses were not spiking up.
That's the difference
That
as
also
today.
Yeah,
So I want to go. So that was then,
yeah.
and then all of a sudden we had the interest rate kept going down. All of a sudden, money got really cheap to borrow. And then people were just getting credit cards, 2 cars,
Yeah.
borrowing
Yeah,
because why not? I can.
Mostly,
I'd say about for 12 years. It's been
not
like that.
It's not necessarily the why not. It's the fact that women came into the workforce,
Okay.
educated, and the model of a stay-at-home mom became less and less trendy.
It wasn't it wasn't part of reality anymore. There's the social
yeah.
fabric of society changed.
Change, population growth made sure that the workforce got bigger, so more of a market for various company to get involved, whether it's clothing, restaurant, cars, houses. So all of a sudden you had a 2-income family. So now they could start spending. Yes, they would have kids, probably 1 or 2, rarely 3 and 4 was an exception. In fact, 4 or 5 kids was frowned upon.
Okay, so that also part of the
Very much
fabric
so.
of social
Yeah.
society. Things change.
Things
So
change.
what happened? What if we look at the picture now? Okay, now it's 2022.
Yeah.
We're going into inflation.
But yes,
Uh,
it's expected, therefore we are.
Yeah, but there's also it's not a real fair comparison because our GDP hasn't slowed down. We've had quote unquote a lot more of exterior pressures creating this inflation, if I would say.
Yeah,
exterior.
COVID.
But let's just go through them one by one. Too much cheap money available before inflation. COVID, which damaged the supply chain line, or would be, because any excuse is good to
Yes,
to
COVID is
use that.
COVID is a great excuse for everything.
Yeah, and also, so that happened. Also, other game, other aspects of the society changed in the sense that if we look at we use the example of lumber. Lumber right now is ridiculously expensive, even though Canada has some of the largest lumber producers in the world. But right now we pay $10 for a 2x4.
$10 for a 2x4,
where
which
18 months ago was $2.50.
Again,
Kind of
yeah,
using an excuse.
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Okay, as far as lumber Lumber is quoted in Chicago. I think it's on the CME. Now, lumber 2 years ago, it was about 18 months or 2 years ago, you were paying $2 for a 10-footer 2x4. Now it's 10. It went as high as $15. Now, why? Well, first of all, construction booming in the States, construction booming in Canada, nowhere near as in terms of comparison, booming like the States. States, all kinds of tariffs put on Canadian lumber to the point where two things happen. Canadian lumber company have now started then, and more so now, they have subsidiaries in the States. So no matter what the tariff is, they can still do very well. State is a lot bigger market, and those who are not on both sides of the border, they have to face European competition. And even up until lately, Europeans were not as competitive as we were, but with the tariffs, European were a lot more competitive. So a lot of that is happening.
Okay, so
they're
it's
selling in the States.
So it's cheaper to get
If you're an American, it's
European
cheaper.
wood than getting wood in your backyard.
Yeah, and then now the
Fucking brilliant.
A lot of the lumber produced in the States is with private forests. Now they seem to have had some sort of a fiscal advantage of late. I think the law has changed for them. So now the need for there was a lot of fires and everything, and when there is a fire, lumber is not all lost. So plus, if you have the lumber disease, so a lot of the Americans / Canadian sawmills in the States starting to produce a lot more 2x4s to begin with, and also a lot of the sawmills in Canada, Quebec, mostly Quebec and Northern Ontario, had so much inventory at the top of the market because they kept sawing and sawing, but not necessarily selling. They were sitting on they're sitting on a lot of expensive inventory. So what do? Well, you stop the mills. So the inventory that you have, which is expensive, you create a shortage so that they can get rid of the expensive inventory without losing too much money, or maybe not losing at all, because they made so much money in 2019, 2021. So now you have a rigged market. Okay. Is there collusion? Probably. It's incredibly strange that you don't sell as much as in the States, but lumber price doesn't want to go down, which tells because the sawmills are pretty much closed or at producing finished product 2x4 a lot less than they were.
So but what I'm getting a lot so far is that 2021-22. Here's the current state of the local economy. We've been told that inflation is on the rise, mm-hmm. which is very laughable compared to where it was 40 years ago.
Yeah,
we're at 0.5 from the Bank of Canada.
The Bank of Canada rate is at 0.5%.
0.5%.
Inflation is roughly around 5 for the last 6 or 7 months. 5% on an annual basis.
But the salaries in the span of 40 years have increased by approximately $1,000 per year.
Yeah.
so we went from 23, 24 to around 63, 60,
Yeah, pretty much.
$64,000
For a family, for a household.
for one person. So
Yeah.
now we double up salaries because everything's more
Maybe.
expensive. Because
Yeah.
if you're just one person living off $63,000, you can't afford a house.
No.
Because nobody's lending you. Because now the price of the house just this year, they shot up another 20%. So the average house, which 41 years ago would cost $50,000, now is $700.
It's probably not as high. It's definitely above $500,000.
So let's say, argument's sake, 600,000.
It's too high. It's probably more between 450 and 550. But let's say 500,000.
For the when we're saying that is for the Canada in general. Because I've looked at the statistics, they're saying it's around 750, but that's understanding all the extremes, which are like Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, where it's completely unaffordable.
Yeah.
I doubt that if you have a house that's worth 750,000 in Manitoba, it's a palace.
Yeah, it used to be a lot bigger. But
It's a small palace. It's not a big palace. It's a small palace.
So, as an example, a builder friend of mine.
Okay, hold on. But here's the thing. We're freaking out over 5% inflation rate, still at a very low rate. Bank of Canada, that will maybe impact the lending, the mortgage rate, and we're looking at a dead end scenario where everybody's freaking out at mortgage rates at 5%, 6%. It's game over because nothing has followed. So cost of living has shot up.
Yeah.
Cost of petrol has shot up.
Oil, yes.
Cost of just about everything has shot up. The salaries have not quite followed.
I've not followed.
Lending was really easy.
Yeah, they would
because
throw money at you.
Because in other words, because without being talking about conspiracies, but you're not making enough. Don't worry, the banks are really nice. They'll lend you all the money you need, but it's not your money. And now, average Canadian, and I keep repeating it, is 177% in debt.
Yeah.
So for every dollar he makes, he owes
I think it's $1.77. Yeah, pretty much.
He owes. What's the outcome of this?
The outcome.
This shit show. It's a shit show now.
It doesn't look good. See, the problem is
does not look good. It doesn't quantify this. Doesn't look good is like when you're a little bit in debt and you lost your job. Now
it looks horrible.
Now you're fucking loaded everywhere. You still have a job and a big house, and you're still not going to make it happen. And you've got 2 salaries, 2 cars,
two of everything,
everything.
And it's not nice.
And your provincial government is telling you, don't worry, it's not real. Like Legault said 4 years ago, it's like, inflation won't happen and interest rates will never go up.
Yeah,
but it's a fucking shit show.
Okay, it's not going to look. It's not looking. It's looking awful, actually.
So what do we do?
First of all, praying is always a good solution.
We are now a secular country where praying is not actually popular.
When all things go bad, start to pray.
Good. It's a call of faith. People go back to the churches.
Not so much you go back to the churches
because they'll fucking charge you.
But you see, the thing is this: people went to the suburbia because Montreal was becoming out of price, and that started about 10 years ago. Now, and then all of a sudden, COVID happened.
Okay.
People are extremely scared of being in Montreal because the density of population.
All right.
So they go out. They buy houses at incredibly inflated price.
Okay.
And by the way, they're still doing it.
I'm fucked in Montreal. I can't afford a house. Now, even if I drive almost an hour outside of Montreal,
You
I'm
still,
still fucked.
now you still cannot afford a $500,000 house unless you're making 120, unless the household makes $125,000
At current rate.
At current rate, and then you better have a down payment of at least, the SCHL or CMHC will insure you. If you put 5%, you have a chance to buy a $500,000 house, which is no castle. And then, but you have to make the test. What if mortgages would go on a 5-year mortgage to above 4%? So,
Which is at this point very feasible.
no, because those people that have bought a house that have managed to put $50,000 on a $500,000 house, so it's a 5%. Well, they have 2 jobs, they have 2 cars, they have just about a couple of kids. Can they be in the kindergarten? And they work from home. But now, working from home it will not be as popular as it is, because the various companies they work for, and if they are in Montreal, well, they have empty space in their lease, but they still have to pay the lease. So somewhere the boss will say, "All right, I've got these 3. I got one person." Is in the office 5 days a week, and he's making $85,000. And I've got, for the same work, same job description, I got another person who can work from home, and he's making $85,000. So what's happening in the state with some companies? They're saying, okay, what's the cost of going from home to the office?
So they're calculating the cost.
And they're lowering the salary to those who are not working from home.
So you think that's going to happen in Canada?
Yeah, because it has to, because an owner of a
So we're not talking about increasing salaries. We're talking about
salaries,
decreasing
or at least not giving increase of salary.
So we're not. So we already established that.
Yeah.
People are not getting paid enough to follow the curve.
Yeah.
The curve of costs of living. And housing and all that, and now you're telling me that other companies will look that
those who are coming to the office
they merit
more because they have more cost.
More cost. So we're no longer. There is no talking about increasing salary, saving cost. Okay, so once again, I'm going to ask you my question. What the fuck are we supposed to do with this? What are we? Because I don't think there's any governor or Governor Crow in 2022 that's going to show up and
the mandate is not there right now.
And literally punish the banks on saying, "Fuck you, eat crow." No, people can't default. You have to lower their you have to devalue their houses. But they can't default. That would be an option. No. You have to devalue the house, so therefore devalue the payment.
Yeah, so they basically no.
I know, because people won't be happy. Be like, well, I borrowed for this amount.
Yeah, the banks. The banks don't lose money.
I know, but I want to run with this idea. Okay, if we think and follow me into this madness. Okay, if we say all of a sudden, and we can easily say this. All this added value of the real estate is completely artificial.
Well, I think so.
Yeah, because a house is a house is a house.
Yeah.
The land, it's all very arbitrary concepts and mathematics. And by the way, and mathematics is not, the only thing pure about mathematics is the numbers. The numbers are pure. The evaluation that we put on those numbers is all purely subjective.
Yeah.
So what is not stopping Bank of Canada saying, you guys are a bunch of asshole. You're putting the whole Canadian economy at risk. So I could sanction you guys, but it won't do anything. So I'm just going to devaluate completely everything. I'm going to drop everything by 40% and say a house that was worth 800,000 apparently on the open market is actually worth 450. That's it. That's all. You have to readjust you have to readjust the valuation on the mortgage, and and the client cannot lose their house because you are greedy pigs. Because the problem is also with people's mentality, and I've experienced that, is when you go and you meet with a mortgage lender, he kind of tells you this lie, which is you've been approved for $600,000, and then you think you actually have $600,000, but you don't have $600,000. The bank approved to lend you that money.
Now, okay.
On a valuation that they kind of did and the market kind of did. So it's not, none of it is actually real.
Here's the thing. First of all, if Bank of Canada would do what you're saying, then it would be communism, which it's not. We live in a capitalist society to begin with. Now,
a suicidal capitalist society right now.
But banks are known to screw up. Meaning, as an example, throwing money at people for 5 or 6 years, it's like cocaine. People get accustomed to cheap money, so they say it'll last forever, which is
not true.
Not true. 1. 2, banks represent roughly about 4 or 5 million shareholders, all of them put together.
All right.
So their constituency is as big. They can go to government and says, hey, we have 5 million Canadian voting shareholders, okay? So that has an impact on any policy decision from Minister of Finance and or the Bank of Canada.
Okay.
Okay, that's a social impact. So, and banks are basically greedy institution. The more they throw money at people, the more, with a lower rate, the more revenue they have. But, and if you look at the mortgage market, banks should not be in the mortgage market.
Okay, but I don't want to hear about what they should or they shouldn't.
No, but it creates a situation.
But what do we do? That's what I want to hear.
There's nothing
I don't
to
want to
do.
hear. Okay, so let's all fucking ride this shit show train until it crashes, because, or is it not going to crash? And
it will crash.
And people will always be able to afford houses without salaries going up and cost of living going up, and price of gas at $1.75 right now. So
they won't.
So what's the outcome? What's going to happen?
The outcome is this.
Your full honest projection.
Is
I want to see your give me your projection.
House price go up. Unions and other people expect higher salary, which at first they will get, but then, technology and productivity will step in, less people making good money because less people are needed. So what you have is you'll have more unemployment, more even qualified people. So, and then once you have that, you have a lot of houses, empty houses.
Okay, so there is going to be a market crash.
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay.
So far, reality makes a liar out of me, but it can't go on like that.
It doesn't matter.
It can't go on like that.
You can only stretch an elastic to a point before it snaps.
But it's been stretched for a long while.
Absolutely, beyond the belief of most people.
Yeah.
But now everything is catching up. So you do see a housing crash.
I think so.
Because, and what do you think will be the impact of that housing crash? Because that's the thing. I'm super, super nervous because nobody says this. Everybody keeps going, oh no, the real estate's just going to go up and up and
to the moon.
To the moon. And everybody's going to be going like, oh, well,
We're all going to get
I'm gonna
real
borrow-
estate rich.
Yeah, I've already planned my retirement over the selling of.
Yeah.
I bought this house at 850,000. I'm going to sell it at 2.5 million
million,
by
yeah.
the time in 20 years from now, and I'll have enough money to be okay and move in a nice little fucking condo with old people and die a very rich death. So
Yeah.
honestly, that's the popular belief right now.
I expect some sort of a housing crash. Now, how will that
Will
crash?
it be controlled? Will it not be
How
controlled?
will I
Who
don't
knows?
know. All I can tell you one thing is that the banks stand to lose a fair amount of money if that happens.
And then they'll panic and go cry to the
Yeah,
Bank
they
of
always
Canada.
when they screw up, they go cry to Minister of Finance and Prime Minister.
They did it in the
And
States.
Also, I suspect that the banks will have to take a write-off on their loans, on their mortgages, if push comes to shove, because they need to have people in the house that they lent, that they mortgage with.
Okay.
So now the banks will do it, as we say, reluctantly, but they won't have a choice. And an empty house put for sale, it sells poorly.
Yeah, and it's a foreclosure. It's a
Yeah, it's-
the banks are going to try to recoup the maximum
Yeah.
that they can, not the maximum of what they lent. Because honestly,
they'll try, but it ain't gonna happen.
and to be honest, it's we also have to demystify something. If a bank lends you, you're approved for 600,000. It's still the fucking bank's money. It's not
Oh,
like
yeah, it's the
not like
bank's money.
It's not like it's not your money.
No, it's the bank's money.
So they're trying to make
Yeah.
even if as long as they sell it, they recoup a fair percentage of
Of
it.
their loss.
Yeah, so that house
But
can go at 400.
you need to have a qualified buyer to be able to buy a house that's been foreclosed, for example.
So you need so the next person that buys it has to have.
It has to have a hell of a good credit, or vis-a-vis the banks, because first of all, leverage won't be there.
And it won't be the same interest rates.
It won't be the same interest rates, and banks will become extremely careful as who they lend to
because
of the state of things that they are.
because they were greedy pigs and they fucked themselves over.
Oh, they always do that.
And they'll blame
Anybody
everything
but themselves.
because
They always do that.
Yeah, well, that's
Because of, and more so now in the mortgage, because the more you write mortgage, the more you were a hero to the banks, because you brought in a lot of business. But cheap cash is like drugs.
yeah, it's easy to get. It's
It's
easy
easy
to
to
get
get accustomed to.
and then you could always leverage it. Now,
Yeah.
what I've been seeing more is people lending. Get this. Okay, I have a house that is, let's say I'm owner of a house, and I have, I bought it 20 years ago, and my mortgage is,
Let's see.
and it's
100,000.
down to I paid it down
Let's
but
say
I still
even if it's 100,000.
or 50. I kept it. I didn't fuck
Yeah, yeah.
around. I kept it. I made everything.
You were
good.
you were a good
boy.
borrower.
I'm a good borrower, but I still have all this equity value.
Yes.
I've heard people doing this. They take out some of that equity cash, and then they lend it to people that want to buy houses.
Yeah.
As a means for them to make a cash down.
Yeah.
When
It's a bridge.
Yeah, a bridge loan. So when the cash down loan, they put the cash to get the mortgage, then those persons are able to borrow on that mortgage and repay the bridge.
Yeah.
And those people that are doing that, they can do up to 10, almost 10, 12%.
Yeah.
Now, those people that are doing that, bravo, super smart. You guys are,
Probably.
you saw an opportunity because you're seeing that right now people don't have enough cash for cash
Yeah.
downs, that they have to go to outside lenders.
Yeah.
Isn't that another big sign that shit's not going right? Where
It's a
you're
house.
bidding on a house that you don't have enough cash down, so you have to go for another lender to give you cash down to buy the house.
That's why
It's like a second lien on the.
that's why some of the banks are, whenever you were putting cash down, they would be asking, is that cash borrowed or your cash? And they became, about a couple of years ago, a lot more tuned and beware of that. Now, you could say it's family money, it was given, and
They're not gonna look.
They're not going to look that much. But the thing is this, if you do that, well, what's your protection if the guy goes bankrupt? Banks that writes mortgage want to be the creditor number one, first in line.
But the guy that's lending the cash for the cash down theoretically
Wants the
is
same,
number one.
wants the same thing too.
Because without him,
Nothing, the deal wouldn't happen.
yeah.
So how do you go about doing that? Well, first of all, you do it very carefully. And if you're the lender of the bridge, for the bridge, you
As long as you get, honestly, if you're the lender of the bridge, as long as you get your cash back inside of 6 months, man, you're scot-free.
yeah, you would do well. Now, does that really happen? Hopefully, to those who lend. What if it doesn't? Well, they have to have some kind of protection. So that means whoever endorses the bridge, whether it's the owner to be or somebody outside of the family, then it all becomes a risk. It's turning out to be a house of cards.
You know what it sounds like when somebody was telling me about that? They wanted to do that. I said, yeah, sure, go for it. As long as you keep it really nice, you keep your lending contract really tight within a 6 months payback period. You keep it really tight. As long as that happens, super. But it automatically made me think of asset-backed loan.
Yeah, that's what it is.
It's exactly what happened in the United States in 2009, except we're kind of doing it at a Canadian sauce because it's not as institutionalized, but we're backing loans.
We're
with loans.
securitizing loans
With loans.
with loans, yes.
And it frightened the fuck out of me.
And well, in the
It's
States.
a very frightening thing in Canada.
In the States,
people doing it.
In the States, it was a lot more sophisticated, and there was a lot more leverage to it. In Canada,
because it was financial institutions.
oh,
It wasn't.
God, it was everybody,
But it wasn't. Right now,
CLOs and so on. In Canada,
right now it's Joe Blow's. It's regular people doing that with their own fucking houses, and I'm going like, whoa, okay.
yeah, so in Canada, we tend to be more conservative. We were. I think in the last 2 or 3 years, I think we were not as conservative as we should be.
You know what? Honestly, Dad, I think we haven't been conservative financially for at least 10 years. I think that people have just gone. Because maybe you were less in touch with the 10 years ago. I was 31. Now, I'm 41. 10 years ago, money was cheap.
No, money was starting to be cheap.
I know, but that's what I mean. It's starting to be cheap. So you got all that. You got a decade of people that are in their 30s, coming out of their 20s, education, getting their first big jobs,
cheap
all that,
money.
and they have access to cheap money. And they were told that.
Oh, it'll last forever.
Absolutely, because
Because
the economy is great, the world is amazing, technology is booming, everything is changing, the world has gone beyond where it was, and black presidents are coming in, and we're in a new
era.
Space flight is going to Mars. That was 10 years ago. They were talking about going to Mars. They still haven't gone there. But that was the whole thing. Electric cars. And so money cheap, cheap, cheap. So don't worry, the future is bright. It's
Yeah.
almost.
It was like in. It
You know
was
what? It
like
actually
that in
thinks
the
of-
60s.
I was about to say that. It sounds like at the end of the 50s.
It was,
at the end of
you
the-
know,
after the war, at the end of the 50s and the 60s.
It was
you know,
like
it's
that in the late 60s.
Let's
the
go
mini
crazy.
skirt and everything. It was exactly like that, differently, but pretty much similar. And now you see.
Now we're going to suffer. Now the punishment
well,
is
I
coming.
tell you, it'll have to come because it's been set up to come by the very same people who are kept telling you or me or saying, well, rates are going to be low forever. Now, the funny thing is that you look at people buying houses, let's say near the Ontario border, right by cornfield.
Okay, houses in between Quebec and the Ontario
Right
border.
close to the
in-
Ontario border.
in
half
the middle of
of
fucking nowhere.
Yeah, right by the cornfields, and they're being paid. They're paying $500,000 for a house.
10
that
years ago would have been 200.
max, if
Yeah.
that much.
No garage, no nothing.
You know,
bungalow.
they're paying serious money, and they're about an hour away from Montreal, and
An hour away, Montreal, no traffic.
no traffic.
So 2 hours if traffic ever picks up again.
and oil is traveling around $1.75, $1.70.
Yeah, for gas.
Yeah, for a liter. And so you're asking a question. So let's say it's an hour and a half in the morning, an hour and a half at night. Gas,
So let's-
wear and tear on the car.
You're doing 160 clicks, 160 kilometers a day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
So there's a cost to it. Wear, tear, time, gas, depreciation. So it is all, unless you're from there and it's a habit. That means you had a house long time ago. It's senseless. It doesn't make sense anymore. And we know. I've tried it to see.
it doesn't make any sense.
Not at the price of gas now, not at the price of a housing now.
So, if you wanted to go in the market, if you wanted to, what do you do? What do you do to protect yourself or what do you do?
Well, there's depending. If you need to buy a house,
Fuck buying a house. Like,
okay.
honestly,
Now, what's going to happen? Well, nothing good will happen.
so
Especially if the economy slows down because of inflation, because somewhere it will. Especially if before economy slows down, especially if the salaries don't go up, you'll have unions looking for increases. That'll be reluctantly accepted, whether it's government or financial or any institution or companies. You have a problem. And how does the problem solve without hurting, without suffering? It doesn't.
what will happen to people's savings? Like all these wonderful people that
They'll
that put their money into the hands of highly qualified, very intelligent, sophisticated money managers.
gurus.
Yes, maybe.
Gurus.
What will happen to those people?
Nothing good because
They
they're
follow the index, right? Most of them follow the index.
they're index monkeys, as they're used to being called by people in the know. Okay, and then
No,
what?
no offense to the monkeys.
No.
Or the people that do that type of work.
So what will happen is, you see, they're being rewarded with assets under management. Now, if you have a mutual fund and you have a hard time, or a RRSP or a whatever, TSP, whatever, tax savings fund, whatever. Well, if I'm 40 years old, I had some saving, now I have a hard time meeting ends, well, I tell my guy, I want cash. Sell everything, give me cash. But then by doing that, if a lot of people do it, whatever stocks or bonds you have, anything, price will come down. And the guru that's managing your money will have less assets, he'll make less money. It all trickles down.
But you actually think people are smart enough to do that?
They will, because
you actually think like there's enough sophisticated or relatively well-informed people that are going to do that.
Oh yeah.
You think so?
Oh yeah.
I think there's a big disconnect with the younger, like people in their 40s. I think there's a segment of population that are in their 40s that actually do this. I think there's a large segment of the population in their 40s that
don't have any savings.
and then there's another segment of the population that have savings that are managed by their,
accountant,
or their union or
yes, but they will want. The unions will say this: we'll increase the salary. The employers will say no. The member of a union who has a hard time will say, well, I don't want to be unionized because it's costing me money on each pay. So it's the RAND formula. So socially, it'll create a havoc, but I don't know if it's the right word.
I think it's a perfect word, actually.
Yeah, a lot of things will be put on the table and looked at and say, do I really need this? If I have a life insurance policy, it's costing me, let's say, $200 a month, and I need that $200 a month, I'll cancel my policy.
Which, by the way, it's funny you say $200 a month. Statistics Canada say latest numbers say that average household is $200 away.
Short.
No, $200 away from from not making it. So if you do have that policy where you're paying $200 extra, you might actually think, well, maybe I should cancel it. So at least I'm giving myself a $400 buffer.
Yeah. Now, also, you have to understand Statistic Canada, for all it's good, do not tabulate black market. If that's not the underground economy, the cash economy.
Yeah, of course.
So a lot of these people will find jobs, cash, to make ends meet. So you see what I mean? So
except for people in finance, there is no cash economy for people in finance because we can't fucking do anything with our hands.
They can do other things. They can be programmer on the side, waiter, barman.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll do stuff that won't.
I like that. I could see your portfolio manager saying to his client, "Oh, I can't really meet you on Saturdays, on Friday evenings because
I have a family thing."
No, I have a family thing. Yeah, he's kind of actually working at the Boston Pizza to make ends meet.
Don't laugh. There'll be stuff like that because people don't want to lose their house first, and therefore they'll pay taxes on the house and they'll pay mortgage on the house before anything. That's the first thing.
It's the last thing to go,
and that's the last thing that will go.
Yeah.
Oh, it'll be a social upheaval, and then it will reflect on politics, and then so on and so on and so forth.
Okay. Now I know. Now I understand why you drink. Why you have a couple of glasses of wine a day?
Yeah.
You got no choice, right?
No.
You want la vie en rose? Drink rosé.
Yeah. Then people check the price the price of the bottle that they get, and you'd be surprised. You can get good wine for around $15. You don't have to go to 35 or 40 bucks. The bankers will be the first to suffer.
Yeah.
I do remember a bond trader convention, or
Yeah, the bond traders, the
bond
Montreal
traders,
bunch,
yeah,
the big party,
the last one I went to,
the real ones.
which is about 4 years ago,
Yeah.
and you had bankers complaining, or no, not complaining, bragging about their Maserati. Well, I can tell you one thing: when shit hits the fan, they'll be bragging about their Toyota Corolla and how much it's cheaper than the Maserati.
Or about their electric cars, because how much they save.
How much they've been subsidized.
And saving
but
on
you have to understand, electric car, you need, if you don't make
If you don't got the
80 or
cash.
90, forget that, dude. You can't afford to come into
You're not in the
dealers.
price point, yeah.
No, you're definitely are maybe Kia, maybe because they don't come cheap, these cars.
No.
You know, well, thank God they're subsidized, but in Ontario they're not. So there's a difference. A lot of them, there's games and being played. So electric car is not for the masses yet. And it's definitely touted by the green people, but the green people don't live poorly. Especially those who come to TV and they tell you this shouldn't happen, that shouldn't happen. What about the earth? What about climate? This and that. These guys are not poor.
I agree. I think there's a bunch of students also that are a little in that vein. I think the ones that we get to hear all about have the liberty of choice.
They're at the top of the pyramid.
To spout their rhetoric, to say what they think, because they can afford it.
They can afford
Whereas, it's the same thing. People that are going to get fucked. The ones that don't even have houses. People that have
I don't care how
rent,
green they are.
but people that rent out apartments, and they're getting fucked because their apartment costs them $1,200 a month. They're probably green because in the ways they can, because they can't afford a car, they can't do this. If they wanted a car, they couldn't afford a green car. If they wanted to, buy organically fair trade bamboo T-shirts, they couldn't fucking afford it because that T-shirt is $50 for a T-shirt.
They're out of their reach.
They're buying,
They're buying stuff from Gildan, made somewhere in South America,
or they're going,
which
or they're
is
going
affordable.
or they're going to Village
second-hand stuff.
Thrifting and
Which is all right.
Well, which is okay,
Yeah.
but I mean but the real ones that we keep on hearing,
they don't suffer.
No, they don't suffer, and they'll never, ever, ever, ever sacrifice a trip to France, Italy, or wherever.
Now, ask yourself the question: whenever you see a guy touting on TV, promoting the dogma of green and climate change and how bad we are and everything, ask yourself this question: how did he get to the TV station? Did he take the metro? Has he taken a cab? Or did he drive himself there? And if he has, if it's an electric car, he must be financially doing very well. Whereby the other people, the little people that take metro because they can't afford a car and they're green, well, it's like a bloody religion.
Yeah.
Okay?
I agree.
It's a dogma thing, and dogmas are incredibly dangerous for a society.
Just before we close the episode, Mathias, Diego, how fucked do you feel? We can't. There's no camera on them, unfortunately. I feel very sad
don't
for you
see-
guys. Every episode,
Oh.
you feel like the future is getting bleaker and bleaker. Don't worry, there's a silver lining.
At least I have a job to pay for my drinks.
Yes, and you know, always remember the most important thing, which is, things will get better.
Yeah, when you die. Now, I have something to say. Okay? Remember this. 90%, 95% of the people don't want to make decision, so they follow the 5% of the people that make decision. Now, where are you? Are you in the 95% or in the 5%? If you're in the 5% of people that have no worries, that will make decision, you're doing well and you will do well. Period.
And on those fine notes and positive words, I have to say,
Let's have a drink.
I'm going to definitely have a beer. But this has actually been one of the most civil conversations I've had with my father.
Yes.
No, not the longest. Trust me, you've never heard us at.
Fancy that.
But Diego's heard us have good shouting matches for over an hour.
Fancy that. Voila.
Paul Gauthier, thank you very much for being a guest on Bros Banter.
And I hope I'll be invited again.
You want me to?
No.
You want to shake my father's hand?
Father and son.
Shake hands, be like, hey, and look at the camera like,
No.
No, we
How
won't.
about we give the camera the finger? Fuck you.
We're family
Yeah,
here.
Paul,
Okay?
give the camera
No
the
need
finger.
to shake hands. All right, we're wrapped.
Oh yeah.